Welcome to Fitness Marketing Hub and to 208 Media Inc. Studios in Toronto, Ontario, where today I'm going to show you how to produce a professional quality fitness video for YouTube. And if I didn't mention, I'm going to do this using a beat up old Samsung S8 telephone. Starts right now. I think it's only second nature as personal trainers. When it comes to creating a YouTube channel, we tend to put more focus on the workouts than we do on the production. I've seen trainers spend hours creating their workout and crafting it and putting it together, only to go and lean their phone against a wall in the corner somewhere and try and do it and expect people to follow it. That doesn't work. It never did. If you want to be taken seriously, and if YouTube is something you want to someday have as a source of income, you need to put effort into production quality. And by saying that, I'm not saying that it has to be thousands upon thousands of dollars in money spent on equipment. It can be done very well and very clean and very tidy just using your phone. And that's what we're doing today. So if you guys are just seeing this for the first time and it's your first time in this channel, there is an episode 1 in this series where we go over all the gear that I'm going to be using today. So I'm going to breeze through that pretty quickly in this one, but if you want to see kind of a more elaborate breakdown of the gear, I'll put the link up here. You can check it out and then come back to this one where today we're going to go over the shooting aspect and the editing aspect, putting together the final product. So as I had mentioned, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using a Samsung S8. This phone is probably about, I don't know, 3 years old. It's beaten, it's cracked, it's in rough shape, but again, to show you that it can be done, there is a pretty decent camera in here. When optimized, it can shoot a nice 1080 60 frame shot that's quite usable for what we're doing. I'm also going to try and emulate as best I can the kind of issues that you would experience doing this from home. So obviously I've got a lot of space here with this studio, but I'm going to quarantine myself into this corner here to try and give myself limited space. Just like you're probably dealing with if you're shooting indoors in a rec room or a living room or whatever it might be. In the first episode of this series, I actually was planning to do a 2-camera shoot. I was going to do a second camera on a slider and I was going to use a GoPro, and I kind of laid that out and showed it to you. If you want to see how that works, link is up here again. But I've decided since then that I'm not going to do that. The fact of the matter is, if you guys are trying to perfect your production, perfect the production with a single camera. Get that right, and then you can look into adding second cameras. I just started thinking with a smaller space and trying to do multiple cameras and you're doing it yourself, it can be a little bit of overkill and it can be a little bit overwhelming, and that's the last thing I want to do here today. So, no second camera, just using this camera. So with that, let's get started with the setup. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get into the camera settings. As I had mentioned previously, I'm using a Samsung S8. When I turn on my camera and then go to the video tab, there's a little cog in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to open that, and that's going to bring me to my video camera settings. Now, little known fact, in most cell phones, the rear-facing camera tends to be a better quality camera than the front-facing camera. A lot of people don't realize this, even though they use the front camera more for selfies and vlogging and things like that. The rear camera tends to be a better camera. So that's what I'm going to be using here. So when I open my rear video options, I've got 5 options here. You would think I would jump into the 4K 3840 by 2160 option. I'm not going to do that. It's a couple reasons. Number one, there is a limit to 10 minutes per clip on that size. My video may go over that, so I'm not going to pick that. I'm going to go with 1920 by 1080. It's not 4K, but it's high resolution, and more importantly, it's 60 frames per second, which I like for dynamic motion video. Dynamic motion is things like sports or workouts or anything that has a lot of moving parts and moving people. It tends to give you a very clear and very crisp picture. So that's the one I'm going to choose. That's the one I would probably recommend for you as well, if you have that option. Last but certainly not least, make sure you take a clean cloth and wipe down the lens of your camera, removing any fingerprints or smudges that could negatively impact the quality of your video. Okay, so we now have the camera set. I'm now speaking directly to my camera phone. And my big camera that I was using at the start of this video is back there at the back of the room. and we're not using that any longer. Any professional lighting has been shut down. All we've got is the ring light, which is just off to the side of the camera. I didn't actually put it directly in front of this camera for two reasons. Number one, I like to have that light coming into the side instead of blowing up my face. And also there's a reflection on the arcade machine that I didn't like, so I basically have it off to the side now. As far as the room goes, I see a lot of people when they deal with small spaces, they tend to have the same issues. There's windows, there's shadows, there's things like that. What I did in this case, most people tend to shoot directly against a back wall, and sometimes they tend to get very close to that wall. You want to try and avoid that, especially if you are using any kind of secondary semi-professional lighting, because it does cast shadows. The other problem with setting up directly facing a window like this is that it can be a huge disadvantage in that you become much more of a shadow. So I'm angling directly into the corner of this room because it minimizes this light. It's still there. I still have to fight the shadows, and combination of some things I'm going to do beforehand and some things I'll do in post-production, I'll deal with it because that's a big window. When it is slightly off to the side and I'm facing the corner, it's not all window. Window is off to one side. It actually is a little bit of a benefit because it's giving me a little bit of a side light, which is nice. More than I probably need, but it's better than having it directly behind me where that's coming up behind and I become James Bond. So if you're not able to angle away from these giant windows or patio doors, whatever you might have, the next option is shutting the curtains. Close the drapes. I'm not going to do that here today, but I do have sheer drapes on every window in this loft, and I have a lot of windows here. I use these particularly for the fact that on days where the sun is lower and it's really shining in here, I can shut these, and it doesn't eliminate the light, but it diffuses the light, it softens it, and it actually can create a very pretty atmosphere, as opposed to me having blackout drapes and just shutting them and everything just drops in terms of natural light. I don't think that's necessarily an improvement by eliminating light altogether. So if you've got kind of dull, boring blackout drapes of some sort, consider going out and buying just a cheap set of colorful shears or drapes that let some sunlight in that you can close, and maybe it adds an element of color or something kind of attractive to your background, as opposed to completely just eliminating light and just, you know, having this really dark vibe, because it's not going to carry over well on YouTube. So when it comes to the rest of your surroundings in the room, using this room as an example, this room's got a lot of earth tones. Like, you've got brick walls, you've got old hardwood flooring, a lot of browns and kind of like dull reds and things like that, which I personally like, but it can be a little bit dull when it all kind of just matches like that. That's why I have no issue doing this workout with a giant yellow arcade game behind me and these wild superhero images and stuff like that, because it does add an element of color. The other thing for adding color can be any of your props, what you're wearing. Now, again, I'm not setting the bar for fashion today, but if you're in a room that's white walls and beige carpet and not a lot going on, in addition to doing things like adding plants, like adding colorful drapes if need be, make sure your outfit has color, because particularly when you are in a small room, it's hard to have any depth in that shot. You don't want it to look like you're blending in with the walls and the floor. So if your walls and floor are kind of those standard house colors of beiges and whites and eggshells and things like that, wear yellow, wear pink, wear green, wear blue, just wear some stuff that really makes you separate from your backdrop. It's going to just make for a nicer image, and it's going to be easier to follow you because you stand out more on the screen. Okay, so now we've got the camera settings set up and we've got our room set up as best as it's going to be. We understand the lighting issues. We've dealt with that by putting it a little off to the side. So I'm getting some natural light off this. It's probably giving me a little bit of shadow, but I'll deal with that in post-production. This is the best I can do with a simple ring light. Before you start, I'll mention two things. Number one, audio. I did talk more in depth about audio in the previous episode 1 of this series. So I'm basically using a Sennheiser microphone. In my workouts on my channel, I don't do I don't do any talking actually. So I just use ambient sound from a boom mic. But for this workout, because I know a lot of you do talk, I am going to talk during this workout at least a little bit. So I've got a Sennheiser microphone, and that's going to be running into an H4n Zoom. There's lots of affordable versions of audio that you can use, but I do recommend that you check out the links below. There's different options there, all very affordable. Audio is extremely important. You got to get this down, because if you don't, it's going to be the difference between hearing my voice like this and hearing my voice like this, yelling and echoing across the room. Very hard to understand what I'm saying, and just not really a pleasant experience, as opposed to me talking with the audio on. So you look into that. If you have questions, add them in the comments below. Last thing I'm going to do before I start is introduce you to my stunt double. Before I start any workout, I always bring this in to basically emulate me. You can use another person in your house. You could use a house plant. You can use whatever you want, but put something in the general area where you think you want to work out and go back. Take your camera off autofocus. If it's on autofocus, stop that right now. So because I'm doing this by myself, I put this in my place. I go back over to the camera and I basically will focus in manually on this. And this is the general area I'm going to be in. I'm going to move around a little bit, but the focus will always remain in this area. If you have it on autofocus, what's going to happen is the focus is going to be chasing you around as you move, and it's constantly going to be causing you to go in and out of focus, in and out of focus, because it can't keep up with your movements. Especially important when it comes to faster paced workouts like CrossFit style, HIIT style, where there's a lot of cardio movements. So keep that in mind. Autofocus off, manually focus in on a particular spot, and don't worry if you step out of that spot once in a while. It's not a big deal. Once I focused in manually on my stand-in, I get that out of the way. I put a piece of tape down on the floor where the stand-in was. That basically assures me that once I hit record and step into the frame, I know exactly where to go if I want to be in focus in the video. And that's where I am now. The tape is down there. I'm centered over it, so I don't have to worry about that. The only final thing I will mention, because I've seen it happen too many times, is always check that your tripod and your camera is level. I see so many videos out there where you can just tell by the baseboards that it's tilted to one side, and it looks unprofessional. It's distracting, and it's just kind of annoying. So these are little things that you have fully under your control. You know, you don't have the budget of some of these massive creators on YouTube, but you can control the little things. And this is where attention to detail comes in. Make sure you're level. Most tripods have that little leveler on it. Use it. Make sure things are nice and even and leveled up properly, and that's it. We're ready to go. So today I'm gonna do a 6 exercise sandbag workout, but it'll be 6 exercises. I'll do an intro, we'll get going, and then we'll start working on the editing portion of it. And it starts right now. What's going on, guys? Regan here. Today we are doing a sandbag workout, 6 exercises, 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off. We're going to be targeting legs, core, with a little good shot of cardio in there. So you guys ready? Let's get started right now.
ceiling. They can be deceiving. Heading for the street into the heat of the night. Yeah, alright, do it again. You should have seen it coming.